As a young kid, I had a wild imagination. Some of that consisted of me riding on top of dinosaurs, wielding machine guns while raiding enemy bases. ARK Survival Evolved does just that and more. However, it does come with a lot of technical issues. The game lets you experience some of your craziest childhood fantasies, but at a cost. ARK Survival Evolved drops you with nothing but your bare hands on the shores where you're set out to survive, craft, and hunt on one of its many maps called ARKs. It's hard not to see similarities between ARK and other survival crafting games which it took heavy inspiration from. At the start, you'll be using your fists, crafting spears and bows, hoping a giant creature won't come knocking at your door during the early hours of the morning. As the game progresses, so does your tech. You eventually become skilled enough to build armor and sniper rifles as you stand proud defending your homemade castle. It is by no means easy to advance through the tech, as after 20 hours of the game, it feels that I had barely scratched the surface. In ARK, you can either play in a PvE or PvP server, but there is also an extensive story campaign which eventually puts you up against 3 boss types and explains more about the history and lore of ARK. It was a surprisingly good addition to the game, which I thought was mostly about crafting and surviving. In the PvP world, you basically fight off creatures as well as other human players. It's a fun and challenging way to play the game, but I was often left frustrated after finding my stash stolen while I was logged out of the game. You can find other tribes and convince them to let you join them, and that way your hours worth of loot will be protected for most of the time, but that felt often time consuming as most tribes require you to be active at all times and essentially do daily tasks for them. Unfortunately, due to my work schedule, it isn't something I could commit to and was left to be the lone survivor. The PvE world essentially removes the raiding aspect to a certain extent. You cannot loot or steal from others, only recruit people or join their alliances to do activities and hunt massive dinosaurs. It was far more enjoyable for a new player as I didn't have to constantly look over my shoulder. However, the PvP environment added that realism of being a survivor in the wild. Regardless of which mode you play, grinding is something that the game takes to the extreme. Visually, the game can look stunning at times. As I fly across rivers on my tame dinosaur, I can clearly see where the developers put detail on their game. At other times though, the game can really look as if it's still in early access. Playing this on the PS4 Pro, I had a good 1080p resolution, but on the standard PS4 it struggles to run 30 frames per second at 680p, which looks downright ugly. For a game that has been in development for this long, it is rather unacceptable. The maps are supposed to have up to 100 players, but when it fills up to just over a third of those, each player having a few dinosaurs on their side, it can become a stuttering mess. Even when looking at footage on the PC and Xbox One, it seems that this game does have some lag issues regardless of the platform you play on. Since it's a full retail release, I'm surprised to see that developers are focused on new expansions rather than fixing their current game. With pop-in shadows, textures that often just does not load, and the way the game runs when the service becomes more populated, it'll be a while before any patch can fix these issues. However, it doesn't distract too much from the overall experience. The sound design does a decent job for providing that survivor feel. Playing this with surround sound, you try and listen for those footsteps at night, figuring out if it's a meat eater sniffing outside your fortress or someone trying to find a way in to steal your loot. It creates that tension where necessary, and anybody who has seen any dinosaur movie will be very familiar with the sounds they make. The weapons also feel authentic, from swinging your axe to chop wood to unloading your machine gun on an oncoming T-Rex. If you're familiar with any survival game, then you'll easily feel at home with ARK. One of my biggest issues though that I had with the game is that I often had to look up on YouTube for videos regarding crafting and building, as the game doesn't really provide much of a tutorial. It's one thing to try and learn or master a game on your own, but the UI and crafting system is often so confusing that I spent 5 minutes on a guide which would otherwise take me hours upon hours to try and figure out by myself. There is no clear path on what you should do, and the world is yours to explore. With the PvE maps, it is often very hard to find the place to set up camp. Most areas has already been claimed, and it is so easy to claim a section that everybody does it. You do have the benefit of not being raided or looted while being offline, as your character is always online and only sleeps when you log off. If you do opt for the PvP map, then it can be frustrating and very challenging. A lot of maps have clans which consist of about 30 to 40 people, and you either get killed straight away or you're killed when you become higher in the tech tree, unless you decide to join one of the clans. If you do end up joining the clan, it will feel more like work than an actual game. So basically you're left with either working for someone someone or being essentially bullied on the server, which isn't a fun experience at all. There is also an additional option of creating a private server which you can set the rules and settings, invite whomever you wish and have fun by yourself. But that is the problem. You'll be on your own. Nobody who can challenge you, nobody whom you can compare yourself with, and it'll be very boring that you'll quickly change to one of the other servers. Regardless of all of the grinding, technical issues and server issues, I still enjoyed my time with ARK. I mean, what other game allows you to have sharks with freaking laser beams? There is definitely a steep learning curve with this game and a ton of replay value. With one paid DLC already out and a second one around the corner, it is hard to really enjoy this game fully if you do not purchase the season pass, and the developers knows this. If you do plan on purchasing ARK, it's something to look into when buying the season pass. After a few dozen hours spent on this game, I'm definitely looking forward to going back for a few dozen more. It's got me hooked, and that is coming from a person who doesn't really play MMOs often. Usually I rate games at a buy now, wait for sale, look in the bargain bin, or rather avoid rating, and I would say that ARK Survival Evolved is worth buying when you wait for a sale. This might be a bit time consuming as it really does take hours upon hours to really get anywhere, but for someone who enjoys grinding and competitive MMOs, it's a game they'll enjoy. As mentioned, it does come with a lot of technical issues, but hopefully in the future developers will fix this with patches. I'd like to thank Apex Interactive for this review code, and if you like this video then give me a thumbs up. If you dislike it, give me a thumbs down, but please tell me why, so I can improve on my videos. My name is Frank, I'm the Red Tie Guy, and frankly, thank you for watching. Catch you guys in the next video.